What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console game podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about our favorite hobby, video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 51. And I was actually just looking right before I hit record on the show on when the 1 year anniversary of this podcast is. And while technically we'll be 52 weeks next week, episode 52 is next week. And, we've been doing this podcast for just over, just about a year, which is pretty crazy. But my actual anniversary for the podcast is February 21st. That's when I published the very first episode of the show. And it's pretty exciting. Pretty crazy to think that it's been a year. I've been sitting here behind this microphone. I will say it feels good, though, to be back in some form of content creation and just talking about video games. I really enjoy talking about video games. Again, it's my favorite hobby. It's my number one hobby. Been doing it pretty much all my life, and so it's definitely fun. It's something I hope to continue to do. And of course, without you guys, that's impossible. So thank you guys for tuning into the show and to this, let's be honest, small audience that we have right now. It's awesome though, and I really do appreciate it. And of course, hope you guys are doing well out there. Hope you had a great weekend, played some video games, maybe got outside. I don't know. It's really been really freaking cold here in the Pacific Northwest, like really cold, like getting down into the 20s. And then it's been like 38 degrees the last couple of days. It's dry though, so I like the dry weather. I can't complain about that. But it's been chilly, a bit nipply, as they do say. Though I know compared to if you live in like the Midwest or some of those other parts of the United States, or heck, maybe you're in, I don't know, somewhere like over in Europe and it's really cold up north. I get it. I don't really have much to complain about. So, but it's from compared to what we normally get, which is just rain all the time, it's a little different, and I'm kind of okay with that. And actually, I am recording early. It's Thursday evening, which has kind of become my usual recording day. So I've gotten into a pretty good workflow. But this weekend, which this past weekend, by the time you hear this podcast, I'm actually playing at a golf tournament, doing a golf scramble. It's my second one ever. I did my very first one back just before, like the week before Christmas, and so this is my second one. I'm excited. As I've mentioned it before, but I really do love golf so much. But anyways, that's not what this podcast is here for. We're here to talk about video games, right? And it's been kind of a crazy week. There's been a lot of interesting news stories kind of dropping this week. A lot happening in the gaming space. And I'm sure tomorrow, Friday, there's going to be even like more news is going to drop, and it's been pretty crazy, especially for it being end of January, beginning of February. Lots of stuff. So we're going to cover some of those interesting stories this week. And I was going to focus on PlayStation as the main topic this week, but there's just been so many interesting stories that I feel like we got to go through them. So this is going to be a news related episode. It's because it's been very, very interesting and I want to talk about them. So that's what we're doing this week. And I promise we're going to stay a little bit more organized for this episode, because if you tuned in last week, I was a little disorganized. And even though I feel slightly ill prepared to record this episode, I mean, I got my notes and everything, done my usual research. I just don't feel as prepared, I guess, as I normally do, but we're just going to wing it, whatever. We're here to have fun and talk video games. And so it is what it is. Whatever comes out is what comes out. Now, for those of you that are new to the show, and I know you're out there, remember the best way you can support the show, I think, is to just leave us nice reviews. Leave us some reviews over on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That helps us get into the algorithms, helps discoverability, all that stuff. And that's really all that I can ask for right now, is just ratings. And then if you do feel so inclined, follow me on just about all the social medias. We put up video episodes on YouTube, Rumble. You can check us out there. I do have a Facebook page for the podcast, so you can like us over there. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. And then I am trying to build a community over on Locals. And the benefit of that is you actually get the podcast 2 days early. So that goes up on Saturdays, whereas all the other feeds go up on Mondays. So new episodes of the show each and every week are up Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But if you join us on Locals for free, you can get it 2 days early on Saturday. And outside of all that social media stuff, really the only other thing you can do to help out the show, if you want to, is just to share it, get the word out there, point people to this show. And also, question for you audience members out there, who should I get as a guest on the show? I've got a backup person that I need to reach out to that I think would be really good to talk about Halo with. But I did reach out to a couple other people. Haven't heard back, unsurprisingly, I guess. But I'm looking for just some interesting and fun folks to have conversations about various different topics. A couple topics I'm really interested in discussing is live service games, Twitch, and I've also thought about maybe diving into like what it's like to be a girl in the game industry. That seems to be kind of a hot topic, and I would love to just kind of, I guess, gauge that experience. Obviously, I'm not of that, so I'd love to get someone's point of view on that. So if you have any recommendations, hit me up. I'd love to hear them, and maybe we can make a connection and reach out to some of those folks. So we'll do that. I'm gonna take a sip of my drink here, and of course, this evening I'm drinking my nightcap. I guess it's kind of becoming my usual Thursday nightcap, the Costco Sangria. Again, I highly recommend it if you've not ever had it. It is fantastic. And if you don't even have to like wine, it tastes like juice. Oh, it's so good. It's just so good. Okay. So before we get into any of the news stories, games we're playing, there are a couple things I wanted to note at the top of the show here that I thought were kind of cool. First is Sony's financials have come out, I think, through the end of 2022, and it's very good. They're doing very, very well. I think up just about on all the key metrics around the board, at least from what I've glanced at. But they did state one interesting kind of statistic is that they said approximately 30% of its newest active users, ending in, I think, December 31st, so that last quarter of 2022, have never owned a PlayStation 4 before. So what that means is that they are attracting non PS4 players over to the PS5. So whether that be, someone coming from the PC, maybe a Nintendo or an Xbox only player, they're attracting those types of players. And almost a third of their active user base is brand new to the ecosystem. So it's kind of an interesting feat and kind of a pretty cool statistic that stood out to me. So I wanted to share it with you guys because I thought that was really neat. Another thing is I know there's a update coming out to PlayStation here pretty soon on the PS5, and the Discord beta is going to launch. And so I believe this is where you can hop on, Discord instead of using like in-game chat or like party chat and stuff like that, which is I think really exciting. I believe Xbox already has this feature or some version of this feature because I know there's been some sort of Discord integration over on Xbox already. I think they did that late last year, if I'm not mistaken. So it's just really exciting. I think this is a great pairing. Again, I'm brand new to Discord. I did launch a Discord for the podcast, so I guess a shameless plug here. That if I'd love to have you guys, my audience, over in there, and we can chat, hang out, do all that stuff. So yeah, let me know if you want to join the Discord. I can get you the link, and we'll get you taken care of. I did leave a link in the last episode when I just launched it, but I think the links expire after a certain period of time. So You got to let me know if you want in, and I want you in. So hit me up. But I thought that was really cool. So we can look forward to that. And then there's some new DualSense colors that have been spotted on the PS app, as well as I think the controller warranty page. And those new colors, supposedly, if this is real, turns out to be metallic red and metallic gray. So I don't really know what those colors. The red makes me think it's going to be like this, like shiny red almost. I don't know if I'd like it. Same with metallic gray. I don't know. Could be really interesting. But what it makes me think of is that they need more color options. We need more of these. And I'm sure it's expensive to do some of this stuff. And demand's going to probably be hit and miss depending on your color schemes and stuff like that. The one controller I actually really, really do like, and it's grown on me since it's launched, is the gray camo controller. If anything, I really want the gray camo faceplates that you can get for your PS5. And I was actually going to get them after Christmas, but they've been sold out. And I'm hoping they get another stock in because I would pick those up. I think they look cool. So there's that. And I also know that the DualSense Edge launched, and I had every intention of picking it up, but I wanted to wait to see if it when it came to like normal retailers. And I don't think it's coming to normal retailers. I was looking online, and it's not coming out until I think end of February, which is kind of a bummer because it looks really, really cool. It seems to have reviewed pretty well. So I kind of want it. So yeah, but we'll see. We'll see whenever it comes out. But we also got the PSVR 2 coming out, which, and we'll talk more about PSVR 2. There's a story around that a little bit later in the show. And the last thing I wanted to touch on here at the top, just real briefly, is The Last of Us Episode 3. No real spoilers that I'm going to go through here, but I do think out of the 3 episodes that we've seen so far, I do feel like this is the weakest. And that maybe, I guess, controversy to some. But this is the episode where we meet Bill and Frank. I think we all, if you paid attention to trailers, you probably knew that this was coming at some point. And it did deviate from the game quite a bit. I will say I liked that they added this backstory, and we can kind of see Bill and Frank's relationship, how it came about, how it developed, and all that stuff. But the end of that deviated from the game quite a bit, and I don't remember specifically what happened in the game, but I saw some clips and I looked it up, and I kind of wish they would have kept it a little closer to the game in that regard, especially. And I guess this is a potential spoiler. So, spoiler alert before this next segment. I really wish Bill and Ellie could have met in the show, because that scene in the game when they first meet is awesome. Now, I don't know, you don't necessarily need to redo that scene per se, but that dynamic between Bill and Ellie, I think, is fantastic. And I would have loved to see that portrayed with is it Bella Ramsey? I think it's Bella Ramsey. Bella Ramsey, Nick Offerman. I think that'd be dope. But unfortunately, we didn't get that. And I call me prude, but I could have done without a lot of that loviness, I'll call it. Just not really my thing. But I get it. I get it. I get the point of it. Um, I think my biggest thing with this episode is that it was primarily all about Bill and Frank, and which is fine. But at the same time, I know there's only 6 more episodes left in this first season, and I feel like we have so much game to cover. And I know there will be deviations from the game. I understand that, but I'm just curious, like, how do we fit it in with what time we have left of the series? And the other part about it is, I think, assuming that the end of the game is going to be somewhat similar to the end of the first season, I think one of the things that makes it so impactful is to see the relationship between Joel and Ellie develop throughout the entirety of the game. And I worry that maybe we're not going to get that level in the show. Again, we'll see. It just has me worried, but it's still fantastic, still beautifully shot. And I'm very much looking forward to watching episode 4 this upcoming weekend. So let me know your thoughts. What did you think of episode 3? Let me know down in the comments below. It's been interesting to see some people's reactions. At first, I kind of was like, I feel like I'm the only one who didn't really think this was all it's cracked up to be, because and kind of on cue, but every major like media gaming outlet was praising it, saying it's the best episode ever, and I was in tears, and blah 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 blah. And I don't know about that, but I won't get into the details on that. Either way, I still one thing that is amazing though is I think they said they're up to like 15 million viewers or something like that on episode 3. Like it just continues to go up with each and every episode. And I think Pedro Pascal is doing a skit on SNL now, and it's been really interesting to see how this show has gotten so mainstream and how big of a hit is for Sony. And so, quite frankly, we're getting more of The Last of Us, people. Whether you like it or not, we're getting more Last of Us. Yeah, that probably isn't good through the microphone. Now, for this week's show, now I mentioned this, but I was planning on diving into PlayStation, discussing some things that I think PlayStation needs to work on. However, because we got some really interesting news stories a week, I'm going to save that topic for another day. We're going to dive into just the news. So again, a news-focused episode. And the stories we're going to be covering is Star Wars Jedi Survivor has been delayed. The upcoming Xbox exclusive Redfall got some interesting news. News about Coalition just broke today, and I actually had to squeeze it in before I started recording because I was like, I want to talk about this, and regarding Gears 6. So we're going to talk about that. There's been some interesting news about PSVR 2 projections over at PlayStation, and another cancellation over at EA regarding what I think would be a very exciting single player game. So lots of different news stories to cover. And there's even other ones I probably could have slipped in here, but ain't nobody got time for that. I thought these were the most interesting ones. So that's what we're going to dive into. But before we dive into that, of course, we got to talk about the games that we're playing. And quite candidly, it's not that exciting from my point of view, but of course, I want to hear from you guys. Let me know what games you've been playing, either down in the comments of the video or hit me up through the various social media feeds so we can squeeze you into the show. I love hearing about that stuff and seeing just all the variety of games that people are enjoying. It's awesome. For me, you probably guessed it, still playing Death Stranding. And unfortunately, I really don't feel like I've had much time to game in the last couple of days. Like I try to squeeze a little bit here and there, maybe 30 minutes to an hour here and there. Not enough to really get re-immersed into it. Though I did play a little bit before I hopped on to record, and it's getting good, I gotta say. So I'm now about 37 and a half hours in. And I just finished episode 7. Just wrapped that up before I started recording here. And I gotta say, one of the things I'm really enjoying about this game is the figuring out the strategy for your route. So obviously you take on various package deliveries and stuff like that. You have to go from point A to point B, and depending on the terrain, you're picking the right gear and just kind of figuring out, okay, what's my path of the gear I have? What's the best way to use this gear? Are there enemies in the way that I have to avoid? Can I take a vehicle, etc.? What gear do I need? I like the strategy and kind of planning around that. And I just got the zip lines not too long ago, and the area I've kind of been in for a while and doing some deliveries. I've set up a bunch of zip lines and using some of the zip lines other people have created, and so just like zipping back and forth is so satisfying. and it's such a great way to just knock out some deliveries and really just traverse a lot of land in a very quick amount of time. So that's been really, really cool. And I guess one of the things I never really expected, I guess, going into this game is the sheer number, like the sheer amount of inventory management you have to do. Like this is very much an inventory sim because you're constantly managing your cargo, your weight limits, reorganizing things, making sure you have access to the right tools. There's just so much of that you're constantly in your inventory menus doing that stuff. Which for me, I don't really mind that too much. I'm sure there are other people that will mind that. So, I guess keep that in mind if you've not played this game and are interested. And the last thing I'll touch on is the story is it's picking up. It's very, very interesting. It's very, very Kojima. It's kind of somber. Like there are some really kind of dark moments in this game that are good. And I think that the game just kind of drips it to you. And there's all these kind of threads that they kind of just it just slowly kind of introduces as you're progressing and interacting with some of these characters. And all the characters are very, very interesting and fascinating. Very, very reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid in a lot of ways in terms of the naming conventions, the just the way these characters are put together. And so I'm very much eager to continue play through the rest of the story and just see this game through. And then once I do, though, I really want to watch the trailer for Death Stranding 2. Now having this first game as context, what can I pick up? Because I know there's lots of clues in the second trailer, so that's definitely been on my list. But that's kind of been the main game. There's a bunch of other stuff I want to play. Like I still want to try Hi-Fi Rush, see if that game lives up to the sheer amount of praise and positive criticism that I think a lot of folks have been giving it. So I downloaded it. It's on my Xbox, ready to go. It's just a matter of when I can fit it in. And of course, man, I've been watching some Dead Space remake gameplay on Twitch. Specifically, one of this new streamers that I discovered. I'll give her a shout out. Not that she listens, but her name is Miss Positivity or Miss Positive. Um, and she's awesome. Like lives up to the name, that's for sure. But the I think one of the things I really like about her is she's a Christian, she's conservative, and I find that refreshing in this industry. So obviously, her and I, though she doesn't know it, have a lot of similar ideological viewpoints, and so I just find it really interesting. And she's just been playing some really interesting games. Like she just played like not Hogwarts, Horizon. I know she's playing God of War. So she's like really invested in the PS5 ecosystem right now, which is great. But she's playing through Dead Space Remake. So I've been watching some of that as well as a couple other streamers playing the Dead Space Remake. And it looks so good. And it just reminds me because I've played through that game since its launch on the Xbox 360 two or three times. Like I love that game. I love the Dead Space franchise. I've talked about this before on the podcast. I'm so glad that they came back to revisit this, and it seems like there's some interest in continuing this game. So I don't know if that means another remake or maybe a brand new title. I would take either at this point, to be honest. But this seems to be a really really good remake. I've heard nothing but good things about it, so it's like I really want to pick it up. But I'm holding off because I know I'm not going to play it right away. So it's like just wait, just hold it out. Especially because next week or the week where you tuning into this podcast this week, Hogwarts Legacy comes out, and I just pre-ordered my copy of it. I got the deluxe edition. I think it was $10 more, and you get it a couple days early. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do that. Heck yeah! So I'm gonna get the game a few days early. The question is, can I beat Death Stranding before that game comes out? Part of me doesn't think I can, but we're gonna try. That's for sure. That is for sure. Okay, so now let's get into some of those news items that we talked about. First is Star Wars Jedi Survivor has been delayed to April 28th. It's been delayed, I think it was approximately 6 weeks. And for those of you who don't know, this is the upcoming game from Respawn, the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order, which is a fantastic game. I really enjoyed it. I loved the Souls-like influence. Thought the character was good. Combat was gritty. The planets were is a beautiful game too. Beautiful game. Fun planets to visit. Liked the lore of it. I'm excited to see where they take this franchise next. So I'm very much looking forward to this game. But now it's delayed 6 weeks. It actually comes out the same day as Dead Island 2 and the Horizon Forbidden West DLC. Two games that I am definitely interested in. Not sure I'll pick up, day one. It just depends on kind of what I'm playing, where I'm at. But definitely interested in all of those games, especially Dead Island 2. I loved the first Dead Island. I'm probably one of the few that did. So I'm excited, even though this game has been an absolute development hell for the last, gosh, what is it, 8+ years? From what I've seen of it, this kind of rebirth of it, I'm certainly intrigued and kind of excited. So I definitely want to check it out at some point. Now it's been reported, and this is reported by multiple outlets, but the report states that the studio basically needed more time to hit the Respawn quality bar, and I say that in quotes. So it looks like they just need some additional time to polish it. 6 weeks really isn't a big deal, but probably lets them breathe a little bit, work out some bugs. The game's content complete, as they say. So I'm not too worried about this. I don't think this is a sign that the game's going to be bad or anything. I just think they wanted to make a good impression. This is a big game for them. It's a big game for Star Wars just in general. So, you got to polish that out. And I think if I recall, I didn't play the game when it dropped, the first one when it dropped, but I believe there were some performance issues, or, I don't know if they were on all devices or if it was just on a couple devices. So, uh, given if that is the case, then yeah, it makes sense. They want to make sure that, hey, we need to, put this game out on the right foot first before, they go through the rigmarole this time. So we can look forward to that. Again, that's April 28th. Not much of a delay, 6 weeks. So is what it is. Now, the next item I wanted to touch on is for Redfall. And it's been reported that Redfall will have an online requirement. So this is reported by multiple outlets, and it's been confirmed on the game's newly published FAQ that while you play either solo or with friends, that you have to have an online connection. And you can play solo without an Xbox Live Gold subscription, which is interesting, but you still got to be connected online to do so. And they say specifically, quote, a persistent online connection is required for single player and co-op, end quote. The other thing is apparently you also need a Bethesda.net account to play, which I think Ubisoft used to do this for some of their games. I know other games have had Bethesda do this. Like, I don't know. It feels so stupid and arbitrary. Like, we need this other account. Like, no one even cares about this account. Why do we need these accounts to do this? Stop with this. Now, one of the articles where I was reading up on this, Video Games Chronicle, they nicely pointed out that other co-op titles that have recently come out, like Gotham Knights, Monster Hunter Rise, and even as far back as Marvel's Avengers, allowed for offline play. Now, Marvel's Avengers, I think maybe they started it and then patched it out, but I know another game did this, Back for Blood, to where when that game launched, you needed to have an online connection to play, even if you're playing by yourself. But they later removed that requirement, probably because of some of the backlash. So I'm curious if that happens here with Redfall. I understand that, for DRM purposes, piracy purposes, that's why they want to do this. But I do think there's ways to get around it. I know the argument to this too is like how many people play offline. And while I candidly don't know the answer to that, I have to imagine it's probably more than you think. And I think the whole premise is like, if I can play this game single player with, like, why can't I play it without an online connection? So I'm not the biggest fan of this. It doesn't really, personally though, it doesn't impact me because, I happen to be always connected online. But I like the potential that in the event, let's say my internet goes out, or maybe I'm on vacation and brought my Xbox or something and we don't have internet. I'd like to be able, maybe I want to hop into this game or something like that. I like to be able to have the option to do it. I think options are a good thing. And so that's why I'm not the biggest fan of this. Now, that said, though, I'm still super excited for Redfall, and it's definitely still one of my most anticipated games for this year. Not keen on the time it's coming out. I think it's May 2nd, but still very much looking forward to it. And yes, I'll play it even if I got to be online. Ugh. I think I got like some heartburn or something. Ugh. Uh, One of the things I've seen about this, like in response and like some of the tweets to the articles, and like where people responding to this, is that some people are stating that this should be obvious that it has an online question because this is a game as a service. And I see that and I'm like, what are you talking about? I've not seen that anywhere. Will it have live service elements to it? I'm sure. I'm sure it will. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some sort of monetization around maybe some skins, but I wouldn't classify this game as your traditional live service game. It's like, what are you talking about? What are people seeing? Or am I just an idiot? I don't see it. To me, actually, the other thing I've been seeing, and it kind of ties into this, is I even saw one person say that this game is Destiny with vampires. What? This is nothing like Destiny from what I've seen. What? What are you talking about? What are people this dense? Do people not know genres? Do they not understand? Like, do people not play that many games to where everything has to be like the one game that they play? Like, to me, this game is. I think I've also heard this game is comparisons to Borderlands, right? Co-op, drop in, drop out type of thing. You choose from one of four characters. You've kind of got this open world to explore. I can see that comparison much more than Destiny. Destiny has a hub world. It's a MMO like experience. Yes, it has drop in, drop out co-op, sure. But the whole point of that is to grind for loot. Does Redfall have loot? It seems like it might, but that's not the point of the game. The point of the game is to play through the story and take down these vampires and clear the town of vampires. I I don't know. I don't see it. I think you're crazy. I don't understand these comparisons, and to me, it really points out that there's a lot of, I guess, illiterate people when it comes to video games, and I think there are a lot of, I guess, is what you would call casuals, and I mean casuals in that people, they don't spend a lot of time trying to understand video games on a deeper level and understand the ins and outs of the industry, keep on top of the news, stuff like that. An enthusiast, if you will, like the difference between a casual and an enthusiast. Because these casuals, I mean, they play the games, and then like everything has to be like something. Like what? I don't know. I read that and I was like, I I don't even know what you're talking about. I can't. This is, oh my gosh. But anyways, that's what's going on with Redfall. I'll still be playing it. So now this next news story that I wanted to touch on, I had to jam this in here because it just broke today. And that has to do with the Gears developer Coalition. They've shifted their full attention now to Gears 6, which on face value, you're kind of thinking like, well, yeah, right? but we'll get into that more. So it's been said, and I'm going to go over to this article from Video Games Chronicle, that Giant Bomb reporter Jeff Grubb, who he does a lot of kind of industry breaking news and stuff like that, but he's claimed that Coalition is now full steam ahead on Gears 6. States that the studio is preparing to transition to Unreal 5, which I think we already knew that. I think they said that back last year that they were going to start working in Unreal Engine 5, and I even think they showed off one of the Gears characters in Unreal Engine 5. So they've been working with this engine for a while. Grubb also claimed that the studio was working on 2 canceled projects in addition to support work for Halo Infinite and helping Epic with that Matrix experience thing that they launched. I think after the Game Awards in 2021, which I meant to jump into and just check it out, but I never did. But Jeff also claims that the 2 other projects have now been canceled. So the other games that they were working on were canceled. And he says, quote, "This was all reflected in the layoffs that happened at Microsoft, which did hit the Coalition a bit. The studio is now going to move on to fully to Gears 6. I say now it's likely moved on to Gears 6 and over the full course over the course of the last year, but definitely that will be their next game." According to Microsoft, Gears of War has sold over 22 million units and grossed over $1 billion when the company acquired the franchise from Epic Games in 2014. Since buying the IP, Xbox has released 2 main entries in the form of 2016's Gears of War 4, which I love, and 2019's Gears 5, which I think is okay, both of which were developed by the Coalition, as well as Gears of War Ultimate Edition and the turn-based tactics spin-off Gears Tactics. End quote. So I think this is interesting in that I'm kind of curious on what these other 2 projects are. Like what were you working on? I think in here it says there were about like 50 people that are kind of being shifted around that were working on these. So maybe at some point we'll figure out what these canceled projects were. But on the other end, I'm like, why weren't they full steam ahead on Gears? Like, I don't understand that at all. Like, isn't Gears like a pillar franchise for Xbox? I don't know. When I think about Xbox, I think Halo, of course, Gears, and Forza. I don't really care for Forza, but I definitely associate Xbox with the Forza brand. And so Gears is up there. I think Gears is probably Xbox's second biggest IP. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but in my mind, that's how I see it. Like the original Gears trilogy is phenomenal. It's so seminal to the Xbox ecosystem, especially during the 360 era. And again, I loved Gears of War 4. I thought that game was fantastic. I was very pleasantly surprised playing that game. I would actually like to go back and play it sometime just to see if it lives up to how I have it in my mind. Maybe I just think of that game through kind of rose tinted glasses, but um, either way, I loved that game. Gears 5 was, I thought it was okay. I don't think it's as good as everyone made it out to be. But really, if I remember the ending of that game, basically that entire game was meant to kind of set up another game, right? So I'm thinking like, yeah, we should definitely be getting a Gear 6. Like, you got to wrap this story up. What's taking so long? That's kind of my mind goes on this. And while I obviously don't want anyone to lose their jobs, and it sucks when you got canceled projects and stuff like that, but on the other end, I'm like, good. Like, I want Gears of War. Like, give me Gears. To me, it's just kind of a no-brainer. But on the other end too, I've been thinking like, what's going on over at Xbox? Because it's been just kind of bad news after bad news. Now, Activision Blizzard deal aside, they had the massive layoffs. This affected 343. A lot of people were saying like, what happens with Halo? And then 343 made this like very generic, kind of almost off-putting statement saying, we're still doing Halo 3. And I think Phil Spencer even confirmed that. I think it was Phil Spencer. That they're going to continue to support Halo Infinite, focus on the multiplayer. And I think they had some single player DLC that was canceled. Shocker. Um, I'm not going to get into that. I won't get on my soapbox in that, but I despise what they've done to Halo. And you just turn it into this multiplayer game, which, if you like it, great. I'm glad you have that. I will say Forge looks awesome, and some of the things that people are doing in Forge, that's dope. I think giving your fans and your players this set of tools to create, custom games, custom maps, all that stuff, have user generated content, that's a win in my book. And it seems like they've done a fantastic job there. So I got to give them a shout out there. But that's not good news at Halo. And I don't think anyone can deny that Halo is not the franchise it used to be. They've done it a little dirty, if you will. And so you kind of got the mess of 343. A lot of devs also came out saying not so good things about kind of the working conditions over at 343. And then you've got the developer direct that we talked about last week. I mean, Forza still doesn't have a release date. Then there's been some speculation on Hellblade 2. Because again, we saw a 10 to 15 minute demo at the game. I think it was 10 minutes, 10-minute demo at the Game Awards. Not in 2022, but the year before that. And we still have no release date for that game. What's going on with that game? And then the Fable reboot, that's God knows what's going on with that. I think that's, who knows. Still no news on, Avowed, though I wouldn't expect that game anytime soon. Supposedly there's an Indiana Jones game that's in the works. Still, no updates on that. Starfield, I gotta imagine we're gonna get an update on that in the next, I would say March, probably a good time to drop an update for that. So I what's going on? It just feels like complete mismanagement. It feels like chaos over there. And as an outsider looking in, maybe I'm wrong, but when you got devs actually saying that, hey, things aren't looking so good, I mean, obviously they know better than I. So I don't know, man. It's a rough period over there. And not to get in the whole Activision Blizzard thing, but I hate this idea, especially when people cheered on, of Microsoft just buying their way out of this. I can't stand that because it feels like such a cop out and unearned. But I can't help but think and consider that this is just another sign of complete mismanagement over at Xbox of all your studios. There should be another Gears of War game, and that should be a focus of yours. Now, I'm not saying that those other projects might not have been really cool or good, but that's a pillar for your brand. You've got to deliver those. And then I've also seen some folks talk about, praise Xbox for allowing them to do some of these smaller titles, like Pentiment, which I will say, shit, kudos. That's great. Also Hi-Fi Rush, though, let's be honest, Hi-Fi Rush was in development long before Bethesda was ever purchased. So you can't really credit that to Microsoft. You can give them credit for putting it on the service, but not the actual creation of that game. But I do get the sense that Microsoft does seem more open to those types of projects. So, it kind of sucks to see these two small projects kind of shut down. But at the same time, I don't know why you've not focused on Gears. I guess I just can't get over that. The other thing too is you've got a Gears trilogy that is beloved. Now, I know they kind of remastered the first one, and I think they brought that to Xbox One right around, some point. But it's like, why don't you do not, to the not have the same type of launch, but the Master Chief Collection? Why don't you do like the Marcus Phoenix Collection? I feel like that's been rumored forever, but it makes sense. Like package all those games up. You can even throw Judgment in there if you want, even though that's kind of the redheaded stepchild at this point. But Gears 1, 2, 3, and Judgment all in one package. Updated visuals, runs at 60 FPS, can do horde mode, all that stuff. That seems like a low effort, easy content fodder for your service and to sell. And I would probably buy that because that's a great package. And I love Gears of War. So I don't understand, like, why aren't you focusing on these things? Like, clearly Xbox needs content for Game Pass, right? And this is one of the problems with going down to the subscription route is you eventually need content fodder for the subscription machine. Otherwise, you lose people and it's this whole vicious cycle. So, why aren't you doing things like this and then focusing on the pillars of your brand? It doesn't make sense to me, but I thought the story was really interesting. Either way, I'm very much looking forward to Gears 6 because I do want to know where this story goes. I do think it's very intriguing. Like the way you kind of find out at the very end of number 4, it does. I don't really feel like it moves a ton in 5, if I remember correctly, but it definitely sets up what could be an epic 6. So I'm intrigued and looking forward to it. So the next story I wanted to touch on is on PlayStation, and it's been reported that they had to adjust their PlayStation VR2 forecast. So, originally reported by Bloomberg, they stated that Sony was making a significant reduction in its projections for PSVR 2. They had previously aimed for 2 million units during the launch quarter, and then they reduced that to 1.5 million in its first 11 months. So, that's a pretty significant drop in expansion in time frame. Now, the interesting bit to this is that GamesIndustry.biz reported shortly after the Bloomberg report that Sony denied that claim, and they denied that claim directly to GamesIndustry.biz. And they stated, quote, "We have not cut PlayStation VR2 production numbers," end quote. And I find this interesting. I mean, Bloomberg is a pretty trusted source. And for them to kind of come out here, make that statement, and then only for it to be denied directly by Sony, I think it's pretty interesting. Now, is it some, rogue journalist just trying to throw some shade at PlayStation? I mean, I guess that's a possibility. But when I first kind of heard of the Bloomberg report, I thought I could see why they might lower their projections. I really don't know how well PSVR 2 will sell. I think 2 million in the first launch quarter is very, very aggressive. I can't remember how PSVR 1 did, but I don't think it even reached close to those numbers. PSVR 2 obviously looks way, way better, of course, but that's really aggressive. And so I thought it was very believable. And I think there's a lot of folks on the fence about it. And I think, there's two reasons for that. I think first and foremost is the price. This is an expensive machine. I think it's $550 for the base unit, $600 for the Horizon bundle. Now, I'm picking it up because I mean I'm a big fan. I'm a big PlayStation fan, and I'm very excited for PSVR 2. But I also recognize that it is very expensive. That's a tough pill to swallow, sort of, if you catch my drift there. The other thing that I could see why people would be hesitant to it, and I do think this is a weakness for the platform, is its launch lineup. I know they said they've got 30 games, and there are some interesting ones in there, but I really don't think they have the killer must-play app. Now, You'd argue that Horizon is that, and to a certain degree, I agree that that is the must-play exclusive game on PSVR 2. But it doesn't. I don't think it's going to have the gravitas that a game, the game really we all want on PSVR 2, which is Half-Life Alyx. It doesn't have that same level of gravitas. Now, maybe it reviews really well and it's this amazing game that blows everyone away. Okay, maybe, just maybe. It does look pretty cool. I just hope I don't get motion sickness. We'll see. But it does look awesome. So I can see why folks aren't super interested in it or skeptical at the very least. I think one of the interesting things that'll be fun to watch and I'll definitely be keeping a close eye on is the support for PSVR 2. Because so obviously Sony's in, and I think they're definitely invested in the platform. I think they definitely believe in it. They see something there, which is obviously why they're making a second unit, why they're spending first and second party resources to get games on this platform, even some exclusive games on this platform. But will it get third party support? Will third party support continue? Because I think about like the Wii U era, and Nintendo did a great job at keeping that thing as alive as they possibly could. Like there were some banging first party games on the Wii U. But since no one was really buying into that platform, it kind of lost third party support. And because there wasn't third party support, none of these big games were coming to the Wii U. So therefore, there's no incentive for people to buy it. So there's just kind of this snowball effect. And I don't want to see that happen, obviously, with PSVR 2. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this does. And is VR still like a viable way for folks to want to play video games? I don't know. One of the other things I've also been thinking about, we talk about Horizon being, I guess, the marquee launch title, but what other like first party like IP that could they bring over to PSVR 2? And quite candidly, two, I think three really, but more so two come to mind, and that's Killzone and Resistance. I think if you did like a Half-Life Alyx style campaign, single player in the Resistance universe with the shooting, the mechanics, all that stuff for PSVR 2, I think that would be dope. Like that would be so cool. And then you pair that with what we all want is the Resistance trilogy brought over to the PS5. Give us a good way to play these games. Come on, PlayStation, get your shit together. That would be so dope. So other than that, though, I don't know. I mean, I certainly expect like another Astrobot game. Um, I I'm sure there's some other random titles that we'll get. And to their credit, they're doing free VR mode for GT7, which I think is really really cool. I kind of want to try it again. I'm susceptible to motion sickness, so I'm a little worried about depending on the games that I play. But either way, that sounds really cool. I know Resident Evil Village is also going to have their update to do that game in VR, which sounds horrifying. Especially there's a couple scenes in there too where it's just like, oh my god, I don't think I could do that in VR. Even more so, I could not do Resident Evil 7 in VR. I considered trying it, but there's some scenes early on in that game that are just horrifying, and I could not imagine doing that. Not only in first person, but in VR. No. Like the section where you're like she's chainsawing your hand off. I think that would be traumatic. I can't do that. But I know they got that. There's a couple other. Let me pull up. As I mentioned before, so I'm getting the Horizon game. I'm super looking forward to. PSVR 2 games, and let's see. Yeah, so I'm getting the Horizon game. I think GT7, Resident Evil. Star Wars Tales from the Galaxy Edge. I'm a Star Wars fan, so that looks interesting. It's $50 though, and I don't know if it's worth $50 from what I've seen. I'm definitely interested in Moss Book 1 and 2. I know they're doing a bundle for that on PSVR 2. Now I have Moss for PSVR 1. I actually played Moss back in what was it, 2017 at PAX. I think it's one of the last PAX I went to. Played it on VR with one of the devs, and it was really, really cool. And that's why I picked up the game. I just never got around to playing it, and so I know it's good, and I really want to try it out. I know it's weird that Moss Book 2 came out. I think came out last year, and I'm pretty sure it sold next to nothing. So I kind of feel bad for those guys. So it makes sense that they'd bring it to PSVR 2. So I definitely want to support these guys and check those games out. I've heard they're very, very good. Let's see. Oh, The Light Brigade. That's the one I'm super interested in. Definitely going to pick that up. I think that After the Fall looks really, really interesting, but that's coming late. That's not a launch game. And then there's another one that's coming out eventually. I think it's that Crossfire game. Yeah, that looks really, really cool too. Like it just seems, I don't know, the shooter. I'm definitely into the shooter games, and then they got some other games on here too that kind of look interesting. So I I don't know. I think it's they've definitely got some games. There's Kayak VR. Oh, that looks interesting. Like you basically go kayaking. I mean, that could be kind of cool, a neat little experience. But yeah, there's some interesting games on here. Nothing that has like real cachet to it. Obviously, we want Half-Life Alyx, but I don't know if that's something Valve would do. Like, who knows? But maybe, hopefully, that's in the cards. Either way, I think this report's really, really interesting. And PSVR launches, what is it, February 22nd? So I'm looking forward to that. Again, I got it pre-ordered through the PlayStation Direct, and so hopefully it comes on time. I know sometimes they say that it could be delayed for whatever reason. So fingers crossed, I get mine, and I will definitely show it off on a video episode of the podcast. So you can check that out once I pick it up, and of course, I'll report on the games that I play. So look forward to that. Now, the last story I wanted to touch on is another one from EA, in which they have reportedly canceled a single player game in the Titanfall Apex Legends universe. So, as reported by Video Games Chronicle and originally reported by Bloomberg, Respawn has a team of about 50 people working on this game, and it's codenamed Titanfall Legends. So, Respawn had announced back in July of 2021 that it was developing a single player game in a unique universe. A lot of people, I think, speculated that, is this Titanfall 3? I think a lot of people were kind of wishful thinking. But it turns out that it was probably this game. So this news goes alongside other EA news that they've also canceled their Apex Legends mobile game, the Battlefield mobile game, as well as, we already talked about it, the previously mentioned delay for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So not a good week necessarily for EA. And I just spotted this before I hopped on the podcast. That's a follow-up to this cancellation from Video Games Chronicle that states that this game was being planned as a single-player experience for Apex Legends. So let me read part of this. The article says, quote, according to Grubb, the thinking behind the design of the new campaign was to encourage people to use special abilities such as wall running and not play it like Call of Duty. The campaign would have included characters from Apex Legends and also BT, the Titan companion featured in Titanfall 2's story. Players would play as Apex Legends characters Blisk and navigate the world with and upgrade BT, it claimed. They were going to have the Legends show up and give you special powers throughout the game so they could tie it to Apex Legends in a really strong way, Grubb claimed. the thinking is that more people have played Apex than have ever heard of Titanfall, so they were going to have to lean into that. They wanted to make the game more active, where you used your abilities more often. The strapline I heard was, "We want to make John Wick meets Tony Hawk." They were also super inspired by Doom Eternal, where you're always aggressive and always getting stuff. He added, "In Titanfall Legends, you would discover the Rampart. One of the characters from Apex Legends has discovered the chassis of BT and brought BT back to life, and BT is a really special Titan now, and interacted with something called the Lost Ark, which is one of the things in the universe that could track down all these parts, and whoever goes becomes super powerful." News of this game's cancellation was reportedly announced internally by EA on Wednesday. End quote. So that sounds dope. Now, I've never played Apex Legends. I really don't have an interest in that, even though I've heard it's actually pretty good. But I'm not really into these live service games. You just have to dedicate so much time to these games. I really feel like to get something out of it, and it's so late to the game. It's like I just don't even know if it'd be worth my time. But I do love Titanfall, and this is a bummer in my opinion. Like, this cancellation sucks. Not only does it kind of reaffirm that we're probably never getting a Titanfall 3, or at least a Titanfall 3 in the near future, but even this game Titanfall Legends, and even this tie-in to Apex Legends, which I really don't care about, this sounds really cool. And I love the idea of having this single player component to this live service game, something that fans of single player games like myself could jump into and get to experience some of this world that they've really built, and clearly had a lot of success in. So I'm really bummed, man. I love Titanfall. Quite candidly, the first Titanfall was the reason why I got my Xbox One. I mean, again, I was a huge Xbox 360 fan. The 360 was my primary console during that generation. I played a lot of multiplayer games back then. Played a lot of Call of Duty, played a lot of Halo, and then enjoyed, clearly some of the exclusives on there, and just those are just my preferred platform to go to. And then when I got a PS3, probably I think it was about 2009. I got it for the exclusives, and I loved playing those games on there. And then, when it came to the release of the PS4 and the Xbox One, I went back and forth. And at the time, it's funny because at the time I was actually doing a podcast with two other YouTubers. I don't think they do, two other really great guys. Uh, and we were all in the Xbox, but then they were going to go get the Xbox One, and I was leaning towards PS4, and I was leaning that way because just the launch lineup for Xbox One just really didn't appeal to me. And I was like, the games on the PlayStation 4 look much more interesting. Like, Knack looked really cool to me. Killzone clearly looked really good. So I made the jump. I'm certainly happy I did, because I've kind of been just immersed in this ecosystem very deeply ever since, and have loved it very, very much. But when Titanfall launched, now if Titanfall would have launched when the Xbox One came out, it might have been a different story. But Titanfall launched later, and I bought an Xbox One specifically for that. I actually got like the Titanfall bundle. It wasn't a Titanfall exclusive Xbox One, but it did have like the Titanfall aesthetic on the box, and then you got the Xbox One and then the download for the game. And it was awesome. Like, I played Titanfall quite a bit, loved it. Really, really fun. Got some gameplay of it. I'm pretty sure I have some of that on my old gameplay on my YouTube channel, talking about that game and playing it. And then the one thing I will say I was bummed about them not having a campaign in the first Titanfall, but they remedied that. Obviously, I got it right here, Titanfall 2, and this game is fantastic. I love the campaign in this. I will say I didn't think it was as good as everyone made it out to be, but because I know a lot of people speak so highly of this campaign as like one of the best FPS campaigns to date, I kind of want to go back and play it to like see if it lives up to that. Like, is it as good as everyone says it is? So again, one of these days when I find some time, this will be fun to go back to, and it's a bummer because, again, it's such a cool world, and fighting the Titans, getting out of the Titans is so fun that it's such a shame we're not going to get a sequel to this, especially since, even though I don't think it's as good as everyone says it is, this is a fantastic campaign. It's still good, and I would definitely recommend playing it. And I would love to have seen a sequel to it. Either a sequel to Titanfall 3, or this Titanfall Legends sounds really dope. Like, man, that sucks that they've canceled this game. And it's interesting because I really felt like EUA was kind of getting in the good graces again. And like, hey, single player does matter. I mean, do you guys remember when EA said single player games are dead? And then they backtracked that because they found success in games like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. I mean, you have that game. You have them doing. So they're doing, I think, another Mass Effect at BioWare and a Dragon Age game, which I'm not optimistic for, but I know fans of those franchises are looking forward to those. So it's kind of a return to form potentially. Time will tell. And then you have this Dead Space remake, which I'm so stoked about. And so it's like they're making a lot of really good moves. I think they're doing a lot of good things. And then you get this snowball, this like avalanche of bad news where cancel the mobile games. I don't really give two shits about that, if I'm being honest. But a delay for Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a huge deal. Take your time, polish it, make it well, make it good. You got that, and then you're gonna cancel this single player Titanfall game. Like, it sucks, man. That's such a bummer. It really is. So I don't know. Maybe someday we'll get something like this, but it's all of you people out there playing these live service games, buying $20 skins, ruin it for all us single player fans out there. It's all your fault. Just want you to know it's all your fault. So it's still kind of a bummer. But that's all I got. There it is. Lots of news this week. Lots of really exciting things to talk about. Busy week in video games. So that'll do it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Of course, I want to hear from you guys. So let me know what you think about all these news stories. Either down in the comments below of YouTube, Rumble, or hit me up on Twitter at Gamecite Podcast. Of course, I want you to join the Discord, so hit me up so we can get you guys in the Discord. And follow me, social media is all all the stuff on there. Again, I appreciate your love, kindness, and support of the show. Thank you for tuning in. Without you guys, I am nothing, just a dude behind a microphone talking about video games, which I love to do, but it's fun to have you guys here tuning in to the show. So stay safe out there. Make sure you play lots of video games. Hogwarts Legacy coming out next week. Who's stoked? Who's buying that? Let me know. I can't wait. It's going to be good. Fly around the broomsticks and going around the hall. It's finding the Chamber of Secrets. It's going to be awesome. I was actually watching, because it was on HBO for a little bit and then it disappeared, but I was watching some of the older Harry Potter movies and I was like, this world is pretty damn cool. So I'm excited to immerse myself into that. That's for sure. So anyways, I'll talk to you guys next week. Until next time, I'm Bonfire and I will see you online.